to another episode of The Tapestry. I am Dr. Francois Booker Drew, and this podcast is designed to amplify the voices of women so that we learn from each other's stories, and that in learning from those stories, it impacts our lives to be better, stronger, and more empowered. And so today I want to introduce you all to another fabulous guest. It is a dear friend of mine. Her name is ROSLYN Adams. I call her Roz. And I'm going to read a little bit about her, and then we're going to dig into her story. But she says, among her passions and priorities are family, spirituality, literacy, music, teaching young children, and connecting with people. She was born in Texas and then moved northwest. She is the eldest of 4 children and the only daughter. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in French from Whitman College, becoming the second generation of college students in her family. And after she got married, she made a conscious decision to concentrate on raising her children, Tyler and Rachel. She started her career in early childhood education, and then she held a number of positions in the Seattle public schools where her children attended school. She earned her teaching credentials in elementary education with an emphasis in early childhood from Pacific Oaks College, and she then became a kindergarten teacher in Seattle public schools. She served on a number of committees and has been really involved with her husband, who is a dear friend of mine. We're in the same PhD program, Kirk, and they moved to New York City in 2016. And we'll talk a little bit about their moving and their work with the American Foundation for the Blind, where she volunteers regularly. And her husband, she says in full disclosure, is the president and CEO. And so Roz and Kirk are very dear friends of mine. And so I just wanted to bring her on. And Roz, thank you so much for being on the show and saying yes. I know you were like, I don't know about this, but I'm so glad that you and said yes. And so what I want to start talking about is, and dig right into it, you grew up in Prairie View, Texas.
And very, very nearby there. Yes, in a really tiny town named Caldwell, Texas.
How did you get to going to college to get a degree in French from Prairie View, Texas, or right near it?
Well, I just want to start out by telling you thanks so much for having me on and for your gracious invitation. And I just appreciate you so much, and I'm proud of you tremendously. And it just gives me a lot of joy to be here with you and talking to you. And you just put me at ease, Francois, when you said, when I asked you what the topic would be, and you said, it's going to be you.
Yes, we're talking about you.
So I just am thrilled to be here. And to answer that question, well, my dad actually went to Prairie View A&M, and he was the first person in our family to go to college, graduate from college. And once he made the decision to move our family to the Pacific Northwest, one of his careers was involved. He was a district executive at a nonprofit organization, and he met a man there that he became good friends with. And this gentleman, his name was Mr. Douglas. He was a graduate of Whitman College, loved his college, and talked to my dad so much about it and how he thought it would be such a good fit for me. And that is really the main reason that I was introduced to the idea of going to college in Eastern Washington. So, and the reason that I chose French were a couple of reasons, but it was one of the things I was really good at and that I really enjoyed, and I felt that I could really excel at it on a higher level. And so once I got there and I met the professors in the French department, I felt like it was the right choice for me. And it turned out to be a great adventure.
Talk about the adventure, because that's where you met Kirk, correct?
Yes, it is. It is where I met Kirk. So it was just, to be honest, I was I really enjoy learning so much, and that's one of the reasons I'm an educator to this day. But I was very unprepared, really, for the experience of going to a private liberal arts college that was at that time probably the most expensive school in the state of Washington, with people that were very different from me. I was one of the very few African American students on that campus. It was very small, and it was in a little tiny town. And Seattle is, now that I've lived in New York City, as you mentioned, it's not a big city by any means, but it isn't a little tiny town. So getting there, I just had such culture shock, Francois, and I was really, really self-conscious and really nervous about whether or not I would actually be able to be successful there. And so I just delved in and ended up having my most difficulty. My hardest class was a sociology class. And that was a class that Kirk was in. And I noticed him. He participated a lot. He was raising his hand all the time. And I just found the workload was just so massive. And I liked the content, but I just seemed that I wasn't really keeping up the way that I should. And my professor, Dr. Farrington, he noticed that too. And he went about without even really talking to me very much about it, seeing if he could get me some help outside of the help that I was seeking from him. And so he approached Kirk about tutoring me. And Kirk agreed. And so
Kirk had a plan before y'all got there, though. Kirk had a plan.
So that was, I knew that he was smart, and I knew that Dr. Farrington wanted me to have the best support I could get. And so when he suggested it, I thought I might as well. And so that is how we ended up spending time together and getting to know each other. And for me to be able to get a really good grade in that class in the end.
So I'm going to tell Kirk's side. Kirk talks about, you correct me if I'm wrong. Kirk says that when he was getting ready to go to school, there was a brochure, and his dad described you and said you were very pretty. And Kirk wanted to meet you and find you.
You are not wrong, and I am so surprised that he shared that with you and the other people in the PhD cohort, because it was. I guess that is just a very powerful story, and every time I find out that he has shared that with someone, I'm really moved by it.
Yeah, he went to college looking for you. I just laughed. I was like, Kirk, really?
Yeah, I laughed too. I guess so.
He had game early. And so for the audience, Kirk is a wonderful man who happens to be blind. And so talk about your experience in being married to not only a man who is blind, who is brilliant. I mean, he is one of the smartest people that I know. But in addition to that, how has it been dealing with being married to someone who's blind and who's also white? Yes. What has your journey been like?
Well, it's been a very interesting journey. It's definitely been rocky at times. When I think about starting out, it's usually for undergraduate, when you go off to college, people are having experiences, doing things for the first time. And the idea that I had this independence, and I also, a little bit of background on me, as you know, you mentioned I was born and raised in Texas. I only got to live there full time until I was about 5 years old. And then I was going back every summer with my family. And so I have very close ties, and I'm really, really, really rooted in my community in Texas. But after that, the places my family lived, except for one, we lived in white communities, and I was often the only Black child in my classes at school. So it wasn't the fact that I was going to a small school that was mainly kids that were white. that wasn't so different for me, but I hadn't really dated anybody who wasn't Black. So that was different for me. And but I just, because I liked him, because he's a good person, and because we were very much, we had mutual respect for each other, I believe that it was the right thing for me to do as an individual. But I definitely felt a lot of negativity and societal pressure not to date him, especially from my own family. And so that was intense, and it was really difficult for me. But, Francois, for me, I'm a person of faith, and I really believed that it was my choice, and it would be something that since it was right in my heart and in my mind, that I should go forth with it. And not getting the family support that I would have liked to have gotten definitely made it more difficult. I cared more about my family, and it was really not my whole family. I mentioned you in the very lovely and generous introduction you gave me, that I have 3 siblings, and they're all brothers, and they're all younger than I am. And then I have my mom and my dad, and my father was the most adamantly opposed, and my brothers pretty much went in line with him, and my mother was pretty neutral. But in the end, it turns out that she is just my mother. Her name is Lizzie Mae Jackson, and she is one of the most phenomenal people to me ever. She's so smart, and she's very loving and wise and extremely generous, and she's the kind of woman who she knows how to maneuver relationships, and she listens really well. And she is so aware of her, well, in this case, the relationships in our family. And she knew that my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, would probably be the key to having my father be less aggressively against my relationship with Kirk. And I would never have dreamed of even telling them my grandmother. I had 2 grandmothers, both of. And it's very wonderful that both of these women, my grandmothers, were friends, Francois, when they were girls.
Oh, wow.
Which I never knew until I was an adult. And then they had children, and then their children got married, which is amazing.
Wow. That is.
Yes, and they both lived to be over 100.
Oh, wow.
It's just such a beautiful, beautiful story. And so they would come very rarely, but my 2 grandmothers would come to Seattle to visit us. And this particular year, after Kirk and I had gotten engaged, they came along with some other family to visit. And I was just so happy to see them and getting together. I definitely wasn't going to say anything to them about my engagement or getting married. And my mother decided to tell them. And I was stunned. And she told my dad's mother,
wow.
She said, Roz is getting married, and Lonnie's not going to come to the wedding. And I was absolutely so stunned. But now that I look back on it, she did something that she really believed was the right thing to do. And my grandmother just turned to my dad and said, "You what?"
Exactly.
And she told him, she said, "Oh, that it's not going to be this way at all. You let me tell you." So she had a discussion with him, as only a matriarch could. And he basically had such reverence for her that he changed his decision. He was in the wedding.